But to the question of a power beyond people, beyond our consciousness, a creator, where are you on that?
So in this interview with Tucker Carlson, Elon Musk opens up about his thoughts on religion and the role it plays in preserving civilization, whether he believes in a creator, and he says he identifies as a cultural Christian. So I want to look at each of these clips in context and we'll talk about it. First, let's listen to what Tucker and Elon were talking about before Elon made his comments about the decline of religion.
At this fundamental level, unless Europe has a birth rate at least roughly equal to replacement rate, it is in population freefall. Population collapse is what's going on in Europe. There's also like a shocking amount of censorship. In Britain, I kid you not, how can this be real? They are releasing convicted pedophiles from prison in order to put people in prison for Facebook posts. There were migrant rape gangs in England that would run around and prey on young girls, gang rape them. And some people found that objectionable, which obviously it should be objectionable. And they were upset about that. And so they complained about it online and were sent to prison. That sounds crazy.
You use the phrase mind virus, but it's behaving like a virus. It's infecting people and making it impossible, apparently, for them to make rational decisions. Yeah. What is that virus?
Suicidal empathy. Where you have so much empathy, you're actually suiciding society. Or so much perceived empathy, but it's ultimately bad for civilization and results in the destruction of civilization. Part of it, I suppose, is sort of the decline of religion. So, you know, as the saying goes, nature abhors a vacuum. So when you have essentially a decline in religion, an increase in the secular nature of society, for most people, they need something to fill that void. And so they adopt a religion. It's not called a religion, but effectively like woke, the woke mind virus. It takes the place of religion.
Yes.
So there you go. Tucker and Elon are kind of talking about this woke mind virus. He's talking about population collapse and threats to civilization as we know it. He talks about censorship and gives the extreme example of a man in the UK being censored for complaining online about these migrant rape gangs that are apparently active in his country. And Elon points out how crazy that is and attributes it to Gad Saad's conception of suicidal empathy, this idea that we are so extremely overly empathetic because of an ideology, because of a mind virus, that it is actually leading to the destruction of our civilization and our communities as we know it. But what's so interesting is that Elon actually attributes this to a decline in religion, despite the fact that he's not necessarily a religious person himself.
I sort of see myself as a sort of engineer, physicist. For me, I'm culturally Christian. I grew up Christian. I mean, I was Anglican, was baptized. I went to Sunday school. Actually, oddly enough, I was sent to Hebrew preschool and Anglican Sunday school at the same time. So it was Haba Nagila one day, Jesus Elo the next, which is, if you're 5 years old, it's fine. I have trouble sort of believing all these stories, these religious stories, but obviously a lot of people do. And I respect people who want to have religious views. I'm not trying to dissuade them from their religious views, but I guess the operating system I have is sort of a physics engineering operating system where I try to understand as much as possible about reality. In physics, you're not supposed to believe anything absolutely. You're supposed to question things. That's how you discover new physics. In engineering, that's how you discover if your machine will work or not work. Will the rocket get to orbit? If your rocket is designed with physics in mind correctly, it will get to orbit. And if it is not, it will not get to orbit, no matter what your belief system is. You can believe. I meet a lot of people in LA who believe witchcraft is real, and then you can do spells, and that spells and witchcraft, magic is real. I'm like, can you magic us to the moon? And no one has yet been able to magic us to the moon. Spells can't be that good. Okay, if you can't, I want to go to the moon. Let's go. How about Mars?
All right, so Elon attributes the civilizational threat that is the woke mind virus to the decline of religion. And yet when he talks about his own relationship with religion or belief, he says he identifies as a cultural Christian, but stops short of being able to believe in religious stories. He says his operating system is that of a physicist. He has an inherent skepticism of all truth claims, but he says if your truth claim can make a rocket work, then you're probably onto something and I'll rely on that. In other words, he's basically saying that the evidence that your truth claim is actually true is the fact that it works. If it doesn't work, then I can't say that it's true. But it's interesting because when we apply that logic to his comments about civilization, he is basically saying that the absence of religion is not working. What was working on a civilizational level, what was holding things together, was religion. In the context of Western civilization, the religion that we're talking about is going to be Christianity and Judaism, because those are the religions that are fundamental to Western morality, Western law, Western culture. So essentially what he's saying is Christianity or Judeo-Christianity is what made the West work, at least in large part, and its decline is what is making things not work, or at least not work in the way that we expect them to or would like them to. But interestingly enough, he stopped short of saying that we need a return to religion or return to Christianity at a cultural level in order to retake the functionality that we have lost in its absence. So he's kind of describing this conundrum that he's in, where he can recognize the value that Christianity has in holding civilization together, and he even identifies as a cultural Christian. But because his brain is wired like a physicist, he has trouble believing that the stories are true. This is kind of the catch-22 that we find ourselves in Western civilization today. We're witnessing the consequences of the absence of Christianity, and they're so apparent that even our cultural genius thought leaders like Elon Musk is recognizing that this is having a destructive effect on civilization as we know it. And yet we can't bring ourselves to believe or come back to religion in any serious or literal way, because our rational minds are conditioned to tell us to be skeptical of any sort of supernatural claims or any sort of religious dogma, because that's done enough damage in the past, hasn't it? And yeah, to be fair, religious dogma and superstition have absolutely gotten in the way of the progress and advancement of civilization throughout history. From the Catholic Church threatening to torture and kill Galileo for advocating heliocentrism, to religious leaders gatekeeping literacy from the common man in the Dark Ages, even when we had the Gutenberg press that made literacy available to the masses. So in that sense, with movements like the Reformation and like the Enlightenment, we were right throughout history to kind of cast off religious totalitarianism, religious dogma, and allow free speech and free thought and free inquiry and the use of our rational minds to win out. But I think what Elon is getting at in this clip, and what seems to be a growing sentiment among a lot of intellectuals like Konstantin Kaizen, like Jordan Peterson and others, is that maybe we threw out the baby with the bathwater when it came to totally rejecting and rooting out the influence of Christianity in modern culture. Now, Elon ends his comments in this clip by talking about how he meets people in Los Angeles who believe in magic and try to persuade him that magical spells are real and can actually accomplish something. And to them he answers, well, can you magic us to the moon? If you can accomplish something materially that I can observe with my own eyes, with my senses, and can measure in some tangible way with your magic, then maybe I will attribute some belief to it. But I feel like the conclusion that Elon is sort of talking around here is that by his own logic, Christianity is a reason why the West has worked. And civilization is something that is infinitely more complex even than a rocket that shoots up into space. Just like magic is not able to get us to the moon, this vehicle that we've chosen of this materialist rationalist worldview is not able to get us to a functioning and flourishing civilization that we long for. And instead, we are witnessing the fact that we are moving away from that goal. And I admit, I agree with Elon's assessment here, but this isn't me coming up with my commentary on the situation. This is exactly the logic that Elon's laying out here. But this conversation keeps getting more interesting. Tucker actually asks Elon point blank if he believes in the existence of a higher power and then a creator. Let's watch.
But to the question of a power beyond people, beyond our consciousness, a creator, where are you on that?
Well, we must have come from somewhere. So I guess that there must be some creator or creative force or something that caused our existence to come into being. What is the nature of that creator? That I think is unknown. At least I think it is. There's I don't know of a definitive answer to that.
But it sounds like you're open.
Yes, I'm very open to, I'm driven by curiosity.
Yes.
And I'm trying to understand more about the nature of the universe. So my driving philosophy is to understand the meaning of life, or really what questions to ask if the meaning of life is not the right question. Like as Douglas Adams made the point in The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy that what is the meaning of life is probably not even the right question. Famously, in that book, the Earth was actually a computer to figure out answer to the question, what is the meaning of life? And then it came up with the answer 42. But then they're like, what does that mean? And it's like, oh, that's the answer, but the question is the really hard part, and you'll need a much bigger computer than Earth to figure that one out. So my philosophy is that we should try to expand the scope and scale of consciousness. We should try to have more humans, more thinking, and perhaps there's an argument even for machine consciousness.
All right, so a lot there. I was kind of surprised to hear him say that he does believe in a creator of some sort, which I guess would put him in theist territory philosophically. But he thinks that the nature of that creator is pretty much unknown, maybe even unknowable. But he seems to be very open-minded when it comes to learning what the nature of that creator may actually be. He seems to kind of have this very optimistic worldview that the more we expand human consciousness, the more humans come into existence, the more thinking we'll have, even machine thinking. And he seems to think that this thinking will allow humans to better understand the universe, and that we will get more answers to the question of the meaning of life, or at least we'll know what questions to ask, and that will be to the benefit of humanity in the end. So I think his life philosophy's got a lot going for it in terms of the optimism. If you believe that expanding consciousness is going to be inherently good, then yeah, I can see how that drives him to want to get humans to Mars and expand civilization and expand AI so we can think and all these great things. But at the same time, I have to go back to his prior statement that civilization is under threat of destruction from a woke mind virus that has come into being because of the decline of religion, and specifically Christianity, which to me begs the question of what exactly did Christianity have right that we're now moving away from, and is more mere thinking the thing that is going to get us in a better position relative to where we want to be, considering the fact that it was our commitment to a rationalist, materialist worldview that caused us to dispense with Christianity in the first place as a culture, which led us to where we are now, where wokeness and suicidal empathy and these other ideologies have entered the fray. So that doesn't really feel like something that we can skip over, especially when you're the one pointing out that it was the decline of religion that is responsible for this. Just to kind of wrap up my thoughts here, it's interesting that Elon does say he believes in some kind of creator that's an unknown creator, but he's open to that. And that actually reminded me of a passage of scripture in the book of Acts where Paul is visiting the city of Athens, the intellectual capital of the world at that time. Paul goes to the Areopagus, which was kind of the public square for open debate of new ideas, much like Elon's platform X, perhaps, of its day. And he offers a perspective to them on the nature of the creator that they regard as unknown. Let me read a little bit. Paul then stood up in the meeting of the Areopagus and said, "People of Athens, I see that in every way you are very religious. For as I walked around and looked carefully at your objects of worship, I even found an altar with this inscription, 'To an unknown God.' So you are ignorant of the very thing you worship, and this is what I'm going to proclaim to you. The God who made the world and everything in it is the Lord of heaven and earth, and does not live in temples made by human hands. And he is not served by human hands as if he needed anything. Rather, he himself gives everyone life and breath and everything else. From one man he made all the nations, that they should inhabit the whole earth, and he marked out their appointed times in history and the boundaries of their lands. God did this so that they would seek him and perhaps reach out for him and find him, though he is not far from any one of us. For in him we live and move and have our being. As some of your own poets have said, we are his offspring." As a Christian, I can't help but think that the creative force or the creator, the unknown God that Elon is open to learning more about the nature of, is the God of the universe, the God of the Bible, the God that Paul was proclaiming in this very passage. As Paul pointed out, the unknown creator put us here in a place that's ordered, in a place that reflects his creativity, in a place that reflects his genius, that he is the ultimate mind behind all of the order of creation and the physics and the universe that we see, and that these things are placed there so that we could reach out to him and feel our way towards him and perhaps find him. And I love how Paul finishes it by saying, though he's not far from any of us. And based on what I'm hearing from Elon, it doesn't sound like he's very far from meeting that unknown creator either. So anyway, I was just listening to this interview between Tucker and Elon and found some of his comments pretty interesting. So I thought I would share them and give a little bit of analysis. I'm curious to hear what you guys think. If you agree with me, if you have any other thoughts, please drop them in the comments down below. And I will see you next time.